I didn't expect to have anything to say about this Drake lawsuit. I don't know much about law, so this isn't going to be focused on the law angle. This is going to be focused on the mentality of Drake as a person, the Karen mentality. Drake is an obvious Karen. This is a Karen move. I'm going to explain why that is, what makes someone a Karen. This all occurred to me because I was watching this video, Drake is Done, by Sean C. Live, which goes a little more in-depth into what this lawsuit is about. But basically, Drake is repeating Maddox's Lolsuit. If you know my channel, if you know the lore of The Dick Show, if you know the drama I've been involved with on the internet, this idiot Maddox, he used to have a show with this guy Dick Masterson called The Biggest Problem in the Universe. They ran this show for about 2 years, and then over some interpersonal drama involving a woman, Maddox basically kicked Dick off of the show. Basically said, I can't do it with you anymore, so we're splitting. And this ended the show, and then Maddox commandeered the RSS feed of the show to launch his own new show, while Dick launched a show completely independent of that. And they were essentially competing, although initially they weren't really talking about each other. They weren't really focused on one another. But as time went on, Maddox eventually started attacking Dick in this really insane, demented way where he was like spreading lies and rumors about him and trying to get him kicked out of everything in LA, which he succeeded at the time. This was like at the height of cancel culture really taking off. And as a result of this, Dick, who was much more honest about everything that was happening in this breakup, started telling the truth. He basically pulled a Kendrick. He said, don't tell no lies about me and I won't tell truths about you. Maddox started telling lies about Dick, and so Dick started telling truths about Maddox. And oh boy, that went real badly for Maddox for like an entire rest of his life. It's been like 8 years now that this has been very bad for Maddox. And what really crashed him out was that he filed a lawsuit against not just Dick, but like everyone involved in the Dick Show. And he tried to sue for like $20 million a person on defamation. And it was a hilariously bad lawsuit. The entire career of internet lawyer Nick Rakita was launched off of just analyzing this lawsuit and how funny bad it was. Like literally months of live streaming, going through the documents, making fun of them. And as I'm watching Sean C. go through these documents that Drake's got here, like they're obviously not written nearly as badly as Maddox's like comical performance, but the arguments are kind of the same. It's literally like, well, they made this song that made fun of me and said these libelous statements about me, but like ignoring the fact that on the same exact platform, Drake had said all these lies and implications about Kendrick, and also that like everything Kendrick was saying about Drake is substantiated. We all know. Like there is evidence to suggest that Drake's a pedophile. So like you can easily make the argument that you can't call this defamation when there's more than enough reason to call him this. And like he's basically opening himself up to be investigated at this rate, I would think. I don't know how he doesn't see that, except that I do, because I understand Karens. And being a Karen, it's a type of a narcissism. It definitely is it's a subcategory of narcissism. But I think that I think it's possible to be narcissistic and like self-aware and like mitigate it and not let yourself be consumed by the Karenness. But it's rare. And the Karenness, it will eat your life. I've watched this happen to many people because a lot of my mom's family is deep Karens. Deeply Karens. What do I mean by that? Like, my grandma would almost always call the waiter to, like, involve a manager or a chef in mitigating that she didn't remember paying for something on her receipt or something was cooked wrong or whatever. And it's basically just her trying to finagle away that her meal costs less. Like, she just wants to be able to get a deal. She feels that in all contexts there should be some way for her to finagle herself a deal and feel morally justified in doing it. So she will find something to complain about, but oftentimes no one around her is in on her game or like respects what she's doing, or whether we really think that she actually believes that there was a mistake or not. If you didn't see anything and you know this is a pattern of behavior of hers, it's hard not to just be like, oh God, here we go. You know, like, oh, okay. She's going to go through a rigmarole. She's going to not end up, they're just going to remind her that she did in fact get everything that she paid for, and then she's going to embarrassedly leave a very small tip because the waitress was, quote, rude. The Karen mentality is basically that there must be a way for you to win. It's impossible that you could truly lose. There must be some loophole. There must be some other way you can approach it that will turn it into a win. This can have healthy results. Like, it seems like Drake started trying to be more of a father to his son because he got called out about being a bad father, took it as the closest thing to an L he can take, which is showing how not of an L it will be from now on, because he's totally a father now, guys. Never mind that he spends his time, like, gambling on live streams. It's like a mainstay part of how he lives his life. Old clips of Drake. There's one clip of Drake that like haunts me, honestly. It's from when he was a teenager. It's him at home in his big expensive house because, you know, he grew up rich. He grew up basically a rich Jewish Canadian, and he's a lot of emphasis on the Jewish in the way he's talking in these clips. He very much thought of himself as like, I'm going to be part of, like, the Jewish power structure. Like, that was the approach he had towards life. Because he was already famous from this point. You know, he'd been on Degrassi. He was, like, a child star. So he had a total silver spoon in his mouth. And there's this scene where they've, like, brought sandwiches, and I guess his mom ordered him the wrong sandwich. And you can tell that he is using all of his strength not to cry. And he's basically like berating his mom. He's trying to find a way that he can, without like physically attacking her, say something passive aggressive enough to like make her feel as bad as he feels. And he can't, because his mom is obviously where he gets his personality from. She exhibits no sense of guilt whatsoever. She seems like an iron wall. I'm sure she's a terrible fucking Karen, and Drake gets it from her. But he can't win against her. He can't win against his mom. He can't win against women. That's why his music is always about losing to women. But he always does it in a backhanded way where but I'm still cool though, you know, like, but ultimately this just makes you look bad and not me. Ultimately my pain makes me look stronger and makes you look like a bitch, you know, like that's the way that he always seems to be treating women in his songs, you know, even in Poetic Justice. Like, looking back at that song, if you read Kendrick's lyrics, he's pouring his fucking heart out about how insecure he feels about his difficulties communicating. And Drake is saying, I've got so much money, I could put you and your mom on a flight back to Africa and take you on a tour of the motherland. So why you gotta be hating on me? You know, like, it's not at all smooth. It is incredibly patronizing. And, you know, I think Kendrick just saw Drake as like a meal ticket at the time and like, well, this guy is the most famous, so I guess I'll do a song with him. But like, not long after that, quickly figured out, you know what, actually, fucking, I will dedicate the whole rest of my career to making this guy not more famous than me at some point, you know, and he really did. He really did do that. And he's not the only one, you know. JPEG Mafia was like straight outright opening every album with a Drake diss because he's like, you got to take shots at the top. Whoever's at the top is who you got to dethrone. And if fucking Drake is what's at the top, you know, there's like a level of offense that comes with it. That's like, oh no. culture's really fucked, you know? And it really just comes down to Drake feels he deserves everything. He believes that he is allowed to be at the top because he was born into it. He was given this position. He was slotted in. He was trained his whole life. He's like the Hillary Clinton of rap. Drake is the Hillary Clinton of rap. I'm going to put that in quotations on the thumbnail, probably. Karens love lawsuits. Every Karen has filed multiple lawsuits in their life. I've never filed a lawsuit. I've never had a lawsuit filed against me. I want no involvement in a lawsuit. That seems like a huge fucking pain in the ass. It seems like it takes up a ton of your time. But a lot of these Karens have a ton of time because all they do is sit around and think about how much they deserve more. They're not doing anything to get more. They're just sitting around thinking about how much they deserve more. How much someone should be giving them more. And they're going to figure out who that is. And so they go out into the world with this aggressive energy because they're hoping that they're going to get into a confrontation that leads to them raking you. They want you to come hit them because then they get to sue you. They want you to come say something that's going to put them in a position where they get to file a lawsuit. Now, I don't think Drake thought he was going to have to file a lawsuit over this rap battle. I think he thought he would win because he thought it is a popularity contest. I think he really thinks that life is all a popularity contest, and it is, but you are popular for reasons. And in Drake's case, those reasons, a lot of them are on the business end, but a lot of them are on the talent end too. And if I had to characterize the moment when I realized that Drake actually is probably pretty good at what he does, it was because of the story of that fucking song he did with that white dude, that cuck rapper, Jack Harlow. Jack Harlow did a song with Drake where he basically said that like they went out on a yacht and Drake wrote his whole verse in like 10 minutes on his phone. And maybe he was like faking and like putting on a show for Jack Harlow. I don't know. But I could believe it because I could write a verse in that speed. And honestly, listening to that verse, it was better than what I would have written at that speed. But like not unbelievably so good that it's impossible to imagine Drake wrote that. I was like, if I did rap as my career and I was 10 years into doing rap as my career, I would fucking hope I could write a verse this good, in 11 minutes on a yacht. But the funniest part about it was how badly Drake kills Jack Harlow on that song. Like Jack's sucks and Drake's actually pretty decent on there, and it's like, well, okay, maybe you shouldn't have told everybody that like he clowned you so badly on this song. This is not even Drake's song. But like even the couple of songs I've ever liked from Drake, his like actually upbeat fun songs, all of them, when you go back through them with the mentality that like this is a guy that's trying to court teenagers, the lyrics all have fucking weird shit in them. Like when he used to bus you to the dance, what the fuck do you mean? Why were you busing? What do you mean by busing them to the dance? What do you mean by that? Why do you talk about how good you looked back in high school? Your high school photos, you was hot even back then, or whatever the fuck the lyric is. Like, just he always has to bring in some weird high school fixation imagery. And I think a lot of it is just that he didn't get to have his own high school experience because he was doing fake high school on TV, like he was living a facsimile of it instead of actually living it. And so he's got like this fascination with it. And so he can't stop like being around high schoolers because he's trying to like stay in that. I don't know. I'm trying to psychoanalyze this, I want to get into the mind of this dude because I have to hear about him all fucking day because he won't stop doing shit that people talk about. But just the whole filing a lawsuit thing, it really is like you can't get God to do your bidding, right? Like I'm sure all these Karens, including Drake, literally prey on like God to smite their enemies. Like, they're up at night saying, like, God, I hope you kill this motherfucker for me. But when God doesn't do it, like, the next step down from that's the government, right? So if you could get the government involved, if you could get the courts involved, that's your next go-to. And if you can't go to them, you know, the police are the next one below that. And what I think we're all starting to realize is that culture exists to save us from Karens, to protect us from, like, our whole world is just culture versus Karens. Like, those are the two categories. And what they represent is culture is how we collectivize and protect ourselves without calling on overreach of power to, you know, calling on bureaucracy to do our bidding for us. Like, bureaucracy should exist as more of a fallback. Like, the government shouldn't be as much a proactive entity as someone you call up when you have a question. It should be like the lifeline on fucking Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you know? Like, you're just going through, you're answering the questions, and then you realize, oh shit, I don't know this one. Let me phone up the government, you know, and get some help real quick. That's, like, metaphorically how it should exist. And then, like, sometimes it's answering more complicated questions, and it has to ask questions back to the population. But it's the government is literally a conversation. It doesn't exist. There's no physical the government. It is literally a conversation. And that conversation is mostly about, like, how do we deal with each other? How do we deal with the fact that we don't like each other? Broadly, you know, there's too many of us, too little space, too many different ideas about how things should be done. We need a government to sort that out when it becomes problematic, when, you know, we're encroaching on one another. But Karens, again, they have realized that if the system recognizes them as having been victimized, they can then use that as leverage to gain something from whoever either supposedly wronged them or just from the system itself. It's very easy to just get payouts from the government to get you to shut up about something. And I've known people who practically live their whole lives off of a few court cases. Like, literally managing to, every time they run out of money, find a situation that leads to some kind of large check. And there are people who are making it through their whole lives on this system. And the rest of us are kind of looking at that and going, like, you realize that all of us are just deciding not to do that, right? Like, we all see the gimmick. We all understand that, like, you can stand on the corner and ask for money and, like, make a certain amount. There are some people who are doing that because they can't do anything else. And there are some people who make so much money doing it that they have a house they go back to at night. And they poison the well for everyone else. Like, anybody who actually does just need the money, now everyone looks at them with suspicion because they're like, well, what if you're just a grifter? You know, and Karens have made the government bad. Like, because of the fact that they can find ways to, you know, yank the levers of power against one another, you know, open trap doors under the feet of their neighbors. Now nobody trusts the government broadly because we know it can be used in these ways. It shouldn't be, you know, but the problem isn't the government itself. It's that not everyone is deciding to participate in culture. Some people are going, I'm going to sell out culture because it's very easy. It's way easier than participating to just sell it out. But it makes everyone hate you. So you can live this way, but you can only live this way if you decide to live this way. Because once you've pulled this trigger, you've burned trust with everyone else. The government has to trust you. It's its job, is to decide. The government can just take all your things once you're dead. So it doesn't care what you do. If you rack up a massive debt to the government, it will find a way to get that back from you. Hell, your mere existence already is, you know, doing something for them. But if you want something from culture, you have to exhibit a willingness to give back to culture and not to betray culture, not to sell out culture, not to give it to the government, not to give your neighbor's rights up, for the sake of keeping yourself afloat when there's something else you could have worked together. You could have chose peace, you chose war. Karens always choose war because ultimately they want everything. They want it all. They feel they deserve it all. They feel that whoever has more than them represents something they're missing. And so they need that. They need it to be brought down to them. If you want to live a happier life, kill the Karen inside of you. Don't let the Karen rule your mind. And I'm not saying let people walk on you. Obviously, if somebody does aggress upon you, then you are, well within your right to tell them to fuck off. And, if you have to use a higher power to do that, if somebody's bigger than you and they're bullying you, you're going to have to call somebody even bigger than them or a group of people to come kick that person's ass. But if you want to have a group of people, you can either call the cops and everybody will see you as somebody who calls the cops, or if you are participating in the culture, there's a likelihood that 5 people who will come avenge you. Now, some people are so, unfortunately, separated from any sense of culture that it's really hard for them to find a way into it. And I'm just going to tell you, if you are somebody who feels like you have been, neglected from culture, the only way you're going to get in is by not having a Karen mentality. You have to have a giving mentality. You have to think that even though you feel like you don't have anything, you do, because you have time. You have presence. You have function of mind. You have another set of hands, hopefully, So, there's something you can do for somebody that will endear them to you, that will make them want to do things for you. And tell everybody that they know that you're cool, tell stories of the things that you did for them. Find other people for whom you can do things. And eventually, you have this sense of community. If you've done things for, 20 different people and never asked anything in return, and then one day your hand falls off, then there's a chance someone in there will be like, hey, I'll front you $1,000 for your mechanical hand replacement, because you literally helped everyone in the village to a tune of 10 grand. I don't know, whatever the fuck. There's a balance in there somewhere. That's what I'm trying to say. You don't need to get numbers convoluted in it. All right. Don't be a Karen. Don't be like Drake. That's been my meditation on the Lolsuit. Thanks for listening.